Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Ladies and gentlemen, yes friends, it is that time, boys and girls. It's time for Tiger Claw Radio. I'm your host, Critical Failure. Oh boy, what an adventure we got this week for you. Tons of stuff. We got 3 huge, super high quality van casts where we're going to be out there cruising, talking about video games, talking about some music, enjoying some top tier tunes. Oh yeah, and that's how we want to start things off. We're going to play a track from KGB 525. Now you supporters out there are going to know this one from the chiptune special that came out just this past Thursday. Boys and girls, you're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. It's going to be a great episode this week. Stick with us. Back again in the studio, back again without a moment to lose. On with the adventure, everybody. We're going to head off to the van for the very first time this week. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Morning, everybody. It's Monday. It's time for the van cast. It is a gorgeous morning. 45 degrees outside. Not too cold. A little brisk. But no heavy jacket. And I'm pulling out, getting ready to head in and do my Monday at work. Punxsutawney Phil did not see his shadow. That's right, the groundhog has emerged, didn't see his shadow, and according to legend, that means early spring this year. And I guess I don't know where this sort of tradition came from about the groundhog, but it's something I've been told about every year since I was a little kid. I remember sitting in third. You know, when the groundhog sees his shadow, that means it's gonna have an effect on winter. All right. Well, that sounds like some wizard stuff. That sounds like somebody's casting a second level mage spell. But you know, it is what it is. My kids were asking about it. Apparently, they were being told about it in school. So that's the thing. I'd love to have an early spring this year. It'd be great. You know, get out there, mow the lawn, do some grilling. That'd be a good time. I would enjoy that very much. There's something every year that I tell myself that I'm going to do, and that's take my little TV and put it on a little table out in the driveway, run an extension cable, and play some sort of a video game sitting on a lawn chair with a cooler next to me in the driveway, like in the late evening. Because I did this once before, I think probably 20 years ago when I was a teenager. I was at my buddy's house, and we had exactly that setup. My buddy had a gravel driveway, like a rocky gravel driveway, and I had a PS1, right? Not the original PlayStation, but the remake, like the PS1 Slim, I guess you would call it. They used to sell it with a little mini screen, which was weird because it didn't have an internal power source. So yes, it had a little screen, but you still had to connect it to a wall somewhere to get power. So I had one of those, and I set that thing up on a cooler, and I remember sitting out with my buddy on lawn chairs going through games on my PS1, and this was like early evening. It had just gotten dark. Specifically, I remember playing the PS1 version of Quake 2. Just running around in the badly ported, or ported as well as anybody could, first-person shooter, just blasting each other whenever we could find each other. It was a good time. It was one of those video game memories I hold dear, All right, boys and girls. It's Monday, and that means I'm headed to the grocery store. I'll put this on pause. Back in a second. All right. Back again. Operation Abyss. That's the game I've been playing a little bit with my kids. I mentioned this game on the air before, but I could never remember what the name was. It was like a weird thing where I knew the game, the icon had been on my desktop for like a couple of weeks now, I think, maybe even. But whenever I could think about it, whenever I thought about it, it was never, let's play Operation Abyss. It was, let's play that weird anime dungeon crawler. Great game, got a lot of elements of a game I would like. I like the dungeon crawling a lot. They kind of added the, you know how in Demon's Souls, I don't know if they did this in Dark Souls as well. I didn't play Dark Souls, but in Demon's Souls, you could leave little notes etched into the ground for the other people who played it. So yes, it was a single-player experience, but you'd get little clues from other people who played. That feature exists as well inside the dungeons, which I think is a neat idea. I kind of worry that might make it too easy, though, because you reach a point where it's like, all right, the next thing we want you to do is go down one floor below and investigate this thing, figure out what happened. And then there'll be a note on the ground that'll be like coordinates like X, 9, Y, 10 or something like that. So you know exactly what square to go to on the map. But otherwise, a neat little dungeon crawler. And I do like my dungeon crawlers. They are good games. All right, so let's talk about reproduction carts for a bit for the NES. I'm going to shift gears really hard. So, shifting gears at breakneck speed, everybody. Why? Because it's Monday morning. We're doing the Vancast, and when we're done here, I'm going to listen to Future Funk Monthly. But let's get the ideas out while I still got them. Oh gosh, what was I going to say again? Oh wow, I was going to shift gears, and now I completely forgot what I was going to say. It's gone, just like an Alzheimer's patient. Right, NES reproduction cartridges. Okay, so I've got halfway decent at soldering, right? I got pretty comfortable with it working with my synthesizers. You know, I've built a couple of Eurorack modules now. I've got another DIY thing coming in the mail. I bought a Eurorack module that doesn't come with everything. It's like a DIY kit, but you don't get all the parts. It's it's just the circuit board and the front panel. So I have to buy all the knobs and like resistors and capacitors and all that stuff separately. So I have that thing coming in the mail. We'll give that a shot. But then I was thinking, I'm having a good time soldering stuff. What's something else that you can do if you're good at soldering? Oh yeah, you can build your own NES carts. That's right. So I started looking into it, and okay, so NES carts work off of a few different handfuls of circuit boards, but essentially the ROM is held on something called an EEPROM, which is just another integrated circuit. It's just a chip. That's it. So in order to make homebrew NES carts, you got to have something called an EEPROM writer, which is basically just a device with a slot in it that you can put one of these chips in, and it'll flash the chip with a ROM. All right, so then you buy this writer, which is about $55. Then you buy a handful of the EEPROM chips, which I think, if I remember right, they're like $1 a piece. Maybe more, maybe less. But you buy them in bulk. You get like 5 or 6 of them at a time. And then comes the tricky part. Finding something you can solder the EEPROM to. Now, conventional wisdom tells you can get a donor cart, which is true. You get a donor cart and you can desolder the existing EEPROM and then solder another EEPROM in its place, and then you have an NES cart. But I've discovered there are, at this point anyway in time, in current year 2020, there's entirely new circuit boards from scratch that you can get. That you buy the circuit board, and then you buy the EEPROM, and then a couple of the other things, whatever they may be, and then that's it. Bada boom, bada bing, you got an NES game. All you're missing at that point is like the cartridge shell, which I know you can buy those, and then a label. So making an NES game, at least material-wise and soldering-wise, doesn't seem to be very difficult. So I'm kind of thinking about giving it a try. It's a little bit of an initial investment. Get the EEPROM reader. Then there's another device called that erases the EEPROMs, which I think is like $16. Cartridge shells, circuit boards, and components. I figure like $100. $100 buy-in to be able to make your own NES games. I've already got, soldering equipment from working with my synthesizer. But yeah, I don't know. I just people sell these reproduction carts at conventions, and it just seems like a ripoff to me. It seems like there's got to be a better way, right? Pay $50 for a game of Ricky Cuneo or Zelda Outlands or something. Come on, man. $50 for a ROM? No way. You got to be able to build it yourself. Okay, so that means $50 for a cart or $100 buy-in to be able to build your own carts. So in order to make it worth it, there's got to be like a list of games that I want to build, right? There's got to be a list of games that I want to build, and I want to... you really have to be to some degree making your own ROM hacks, right? Isn't that what makes it worth it? So let's say I got this thing off the ground and I was able to start making my own NES carts, because I remember talking about this like 5 years ago. I talked about it, but it was like a pie in the sky thing. This is like when I first discovered what EEPROMs were. But I hadn't soldered anything at that point, and for some reason the soldering was like a blocker for me. It was something like I didn't want to do, because I thought it was more difficult than it actually was. But now I'm really thinking about it. Turn back the clock like 10 years. I made a couple of Green Leo albums, a couple of chiptune albums, and one in particular I made, The King of Time, was made entirely with base usable NES Famitracker sounds. None of that used the sample channel, right? The NES had a noise channel that you can use to produce samples, right? Oftentimes we heard this in an NES game where they had some sort of voice sample, like say Bases Loaded, where they would say strike or something like that. That was loaded into this one channel. The problem was it took a lot of memory to do that. So when people make Famitracker songs, one of the things they'll do is they'll load drum samples into that channel, which sounds really great and technically would work on an NES, but ultimately you're going to end up with a song file that's bigger than most ROMs are. Well, when I made this album, I didn't do any of that. So when it comes to sheer NES files, the entire album is like, I don't know, a quarter of a megabyte, something like that. And I used to talk about how I wanted to make some sort of NES ROM that you could use to play the songs like a jukebox, because that would enable me to make a cartridge version of the album that you could play on a Nintendo. And I didn't really look into it too deeply because my interest at that time and right now was primarily in making chiptunes. It wasn't really in making ROM hacks. So in order to accomplish that, I would have had to have, learned a whole new skill of making ROM hacks. So I don't know. If I can make my own homebrew carts, that gets me one step closer to Green Leo having an album release in the form of an NES cartridge. What do you think? Would you guys buy a Green Leo album and an NES cartridge? I know I'd be if that was a reality, I'd be happy to make more music that would fit into a cartridge like that. I don't know. It's a neat thought experiment. I'm closer to making that a reality than I was 5 years ago when I thought about this, but there's still some major hurdles to go through. I'd have to find some way to put together the actual ROM, because right now I don't have a ROM. I just have a series of NSF files, the NES music files. So those would have to be compiled into some sort of runnable program. And then I also need to collect the equipment to start making NES carts. I don't know. It just seems like it'd be a fun thing to do. Interestingly enough, the one part about all of this that I have no idea how I would accomplish is doing the label. All of the research that I find says doing the label ends up being like the most difficult portion. To do an authentic looking NES label, because that little flappy bit at the top tends to stick up. It tends to come off and stick up. That's like one of the telltale signs of a bad repro is that how the label doesn't really hold up on a repro. Well, that's it for me. It's Monday. The weekend's pretty far away at this point. So we're the weekend here. I don't know what I'd play, so I'm not really sure what I'm looking forward to. Right now I'm ready to get down to the office and take my Monday head on and just do the best I can to get through it. So with that, I'm going to send you guys back to the office, back to Panzer Studios, the one place above all else, I'd love to be right now. I'll see you guys there. Back again, comfortable in Panzer Studios. Feels good, man. It's Friday evening. This week was hard fought, as I'm sure it is for you. Whatever you guys are doing out there, school, work, whatever it is you have to survive, whatever it is that you're sitting at day after day, thinking, man, I can't wait to get home. I can't wait to get back to my place where the video games are, where the music is, where I can get on there and talk to my friends. I can play Xbox. I can do whatever it is that you want to do, that you look forward to all day. I'm raising my glass of, what is this? This more black tea, unsweetened black tea that has been left out overnight. I'm raising my overnight tea to you guys out there. We're going to kick things off. We're going to kick things off 19 and a half minutes in. We got a track from Protodome coming up. Protodome, they do that chip funk like no one else can do it. But first, before that, we're going to take a minute to thank the sponsors. It's a Patreon-sponsored program, guys. This only stays alive because people contribute. It's the only way I can get a show like this to 321 episodes. And to these guys who give of their resources, I can only offer a few meager things. They get access to the Patreon feed, which had the chiptune special just this past week. They also get early access to the show. They get their names read off in a hollow distinguished gentleman. They are Hemrock, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and Konstantin Kelman. Thank you guys very much. I hope you guys are enjoying the party. And with that, this is Blue Shift. Oh boy, there's not a moment to lose, boys and girls. We're 22 minutes and 55 seconds into Tiger Claw Radio, episode 321. And guess what? We're going back to the van. Join me, won't you? Morning, everybody. It's Thursday morning. It's time for the Vancast. It's 6:24 and it's rainy out this morning. We got 37 degrees. A little on the chilly side, not too bad. Just backing out of my spot right now. Getting ready to drive to the office. Another day, another dollar. Okay, so I finished Resident Evil 2 Remake. Promise the last time I'm going to be talking about this game for a while. Finished it last night. I finished the B game. I played the A game with Leon, and then I did the second run with Claire. And I finished the second run. So when you finish the second run, that's when you get to see the true ending. It's a little bit longer cinematic than the first time around, and it also opens up a special mode called the Fourth Survivor. So the true ending was totally not worth it. In the regular, by the way, if you haven't finished that game yet, then my bad, bros. But yeah, the guy walks off. You know, they ride away in a train at the end of the A ending. In the B ending, they ride away in a train and then walk away in the sunset, and that's really it. What are you gonna do? But then I was able to move on to like the special modes. Resident Evil 2's got a bunch of special modes that I'd been waiting until I thoroughly completed the game first. And these are like, I was talking about this with Alex last night. What was the term he used? They're like speedrun modes. You have a closed course, You're trying to get through the course, and there's a bunch of zombies in the way, so you have like an action set up, and then you don't really have the ammo to kill all the zombies. So there's a lot of dodging and weaving. There's a lot of collecting of resources. If you want to make it through this thing, you gotta really be clever. You have to. There's monsters in the special modes that don't exist in the regular game, which kind of makes it fun to play. But I don't know, it's cool to see the new monsters, but it's not enough to really keep me hooked. For example, there's like a pale, sort of a pale, faster zombie that sort of looks different, and he only responds to high efficiency bullets. So if you shoot him with your regular gun, it's not going to slow him down. But you have to use these explosive rounds that are much more scarce. So you can't really kill one of these things. I mean, you can, but you're not given that much resources. The idea is you get out the explosive rounds, put one in the head, and while he's staggering back, that's when you run past. And you make your move, and you keep rolling. They also added, what are they called? I want to say gumball machine, but that doesn't sound right. Vending machines. I don't know. Yeah, they look like gumball machines. Gumball machines with like 3 different types of gumballs. And then you look at them, and the idea is there's 3 items in there, and you can only pick one, and then that's what you pick to move on. So you'll walk up to one of these things, and you'll be hurting, and you have to make the decision between getting more high explosive rounds to deal with the pale head zombies, or getting a healer to try and bring your health back a little bit. And they're all so hard. Oh my gosh, like harder than is fun, in my opinion. But they're pretty neat. I mean, you play as like side characters. Like there's one point in the game where you meet the bad guy, and the bad guy has like a dead woman on the table. You go to his office, and then he starts talking or whatever. Well, they're one of the modes. You play as that woman who died on the table, but instead of her dying on the table, she killed the bad guy, and now she's trying to run out. So, I don't know. Pretty neat. There's some interesting design choices, but it's all just really too hard to be any fun, in my opinion. The particular one that unlocks after you beat both modes, called the Fourth Survivor, that you play as one of the, what do you call it? Like one of the troops, the cleanup troops, the Umbrella Squad troops. And basically the idea is you have to run through the entirety of the game. You start like in the sewers, and you have to run out of the sewer into the main area, like of the house, and then you run out of the house, and you go all around. You go all around. Basically, I just run through the entire game. I mean, it was kind of neat to see, like, there's certain doors that are blocked off through the game, like when you're playing through normally. But then when you do these like time run modes, then they're open, and then it makes more sense why they're there. So that was what was waiting for me at the end of Resident Evil 2 Remake. There was several modes, which held my interest for like, I don't know, a couple of hours, and then that was it. And I'm ready to be done with it now. Yeah, so that was cool. And then after that, I went back to Resident Evil 5. I spent a couple hours after that playing Resident Evil 5 Mercenaries mode with Alex Swing, which is still probably my favorite right now. It was a good time. My goodness. I was talking to Alex, and I was like, man, we do all these like YouTube videos that are arguably questionable in quality. A lot of, hey, we're going to sit down and play games and stuff. We should record one of our Mercenaries matches, because, you know, some of those matches are really awesome. The Mercenaries mode can get really, really difficult. Really difficult. And towards the end, I feel like Alex and I had a pretty tight squad. And we were doing super nuanced, big brain plays where it's like, all right, look, First, you got to collect all the time bonuses. Then we're going to go to this one particular area where they spawn a lot. And then our fallback point is going to be the mixing bowl in the middle. But we know you can't stay there long because then there's a big monster that shows up. It was it's rather enjoyable. Oh. All right, but that's really all I want to say about Resident Evil for the time being. My goodness, I love that series. Something about that series in the last couple of years just really took off for me. I've been enjoying it very, very much. Looking forward to getting Resident Evil Remake 3. That'll be a good time. But as for obtaining Resident Evil Remake 3, there's a major problem. This brings me to my next subject, is that I got to take a break from buying stuff. I've completed and fulfilled my gaming budget for a while. I'm broke, bros. I'm broke. The last sweet games I remember buying was Operation Abyss, which is like an anime dungeon crawler. The anime part is kind of irritating, but the dungeon crawling aspect is a lot of fun. And the Castlevania Anniversary Collection from Konami on Steam. So I'll have to just dig into those two games, and the rest of my collection, while I try and recoup some fundage. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing Castlevania Collection. Again, I said this before, but the game I'm most looking forward to is Castlevania Adventure on the Game Boy. I used to have a Game Boy Pocket. That's the one that was smaller, but before Game Boy Color, right? Game Boy Pocket had a better refresh rate than the original Game Boy, and I distinctly remember playing Castlevania Adventure on the Game Boy Pocket and loving it. I don't remember what happened to that machine. I think I might have given it to Engie or something. I think Engie was in a spot where he was waiting a lot. I can't remember what the deal was. If he was taking the bus at the time, or if he was something, or in some sort of situation where he was having to sit and wait on a regular basis. And he had given me tons of stuff in the past. I think that's what ended up happening to it. Long story short, I don't have the Game Boy Pocket anymore. And I think that when I try and play Castlevania Adventure on the DMG Game Boy, the refresh rate is not good enough in my opinion. So the only way I can play it is the Game Boy Color, which is not a bad route. Game Boy Color is an awesome system, but it's one of those things where it's the Game Boy Pocket. That's where I remember it the most. That's where that's how the memory is set up, right? You know how you ever have a game where it's a game that's your favorite, but there's a specific memory that you flash back to that makes it your favorite. You know what I mean? This is often the case when we see people who really like games that are not that great. Yeah, I know Rygar isn't great, but I remember playing it when I was 8 years old, and I had it was a Saturday morning, and I had milk and cookies. Maybe my older brother was sick, so he was in bed, so I didn't have to share the Nintendo, and I just played Rygar all morning that day. And consequently, it's a favorite. That kind of thing, That's the way Castlevania Adventure was for me. I was looking forward to playing it again on the collection for that reason. And before you say it, I know emulation has been around forever. I've always been able to play it in emulation. I've also always been able to play it on my Game Boy Advance SP. It's just a particular memory that has come back that I'm looking forward to playing with a little bit of the old save and load as necessary. Because unlike Mike Matai from Cinemassacre, I've got no problem with save and load and rewind feature. No problem at all. If that's how you choose to enjoy the game, and when you finish the game using those features, if you're satisfied and you feel fulfilled as though you've completed the game, yeah, man, I beat that game. Rock and roll. More power to you. And that's what I'm going to do. All right. You know, another game I haven't played in a while is the SNK collection. I got the SNK collection and I sat down with it twice. And I made the decision that it was a really good buy because I enjoyed playing the Ikari Warriors games. You guys play Ikari Warriors? We had Ikari Warriors 2 when I was a kid. It was one of the few NES games I remember actually renting from like a video store. I remember renting The Simpsons, Bart versus the Space Mutants. And that was a weird game. That was one that we all looked at each other. And we were like, man, I'm glad we rented this first. And you may love that game. There's things to like about it. It's just it was one of those punishingly hard games, but not in a fun way. So yeah, that game didn't resonate with us. I remember renting that one, and I also remember Ikari Warriors, which is weird because that game, Ikari Warriors 2, that game on the NES is one of the weirdest games. It's one of the weirdest games. The artwork is weird. It's, you know, specifically in the heroes, they look very weird. There's a lot of weirdness in terms of how power-ups work. You find these weird portals. And there's these weird mini games. There's like voice samples in it, but you can't tell what they're saying. There's a lot of weirdness. So it was wonderful to revisit Ikari Warriors 2 and play the original Ikari Warriors, which I wasn't familiar with. I get to play that some. And then just once I tried Ikari Warriors 3 and I really liked it. So that's another one that would be awesome to go back to and spend some time, you know, playing games that I own would be the SNK collection. A lot of unplayed awesomeness in that collection for me to discover. So between that and the Castlevania collection, I say I got my weekend all cut out for me if I can pry myself away from Resident Evil 5 Mercenaries mode. Apart from that, I've been making music. I got I think 4 working demos in Fama Tracker right now. I want to push towards a new album, like a new full-length album. The last full-length Fama Tracker album I made was Laguna Seca, and I feel like it was a really strong album. And that was last year. That was in November, I think that came out. So I need a 2020 release, in my opinion. I would like to see a new album completed in the next couple months. And that to me is 10 plus songs would be my goal. So there's a lot of work to do, and I don't have a concept yet. Typically when I do an album these days, there's some sort of concept. This album is designed to do this. Laguna Seca was a full-length Fama Tracker album with sort of a racing theme. We had Awesome Jeff was a Fama Tracker album with a Maniac Mansion theme. And that's kind of how I like to do it. And then we had what was the one I did that was made with the Volca keys? What was that called? Mad Scientist? Is that it? I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Mad Scientist. That was an album that was designed to. I was doing jam sessions with the Volca keys and pocket operators, a couple of analog synth instruments that I had handy. I was doing jam sessions on the daily with those, and the whole point was just to capture the jam sessions. That's what I did. So I just took my favorite ones and I put it together in an album. So that entire album was recorded in a week or something. And it's funny because when I present the collection of music I've made to people, that's usually one of the Black Sheep albums, not the one I would push forward to represent my collection. But when I go back to revisit my music personally, that's the one I go back to. It's my favorite. It's my favorite because the songs evolved naturally. Yeah, there's mistakes in them because of that. You can hear certain parts where I would hit a key and it would not sound right. But they were live jams. They evolved naturally. I liked it. So it's back to Fama Tracker for me.
which is like, I said I wasn't going to do this again. I said I was going to flip over to Milky Tracker or something like that. But I don't know. Famitracker right now, when I'm making electronic music, that's the one piece of software where I can go in and I can just let it flow, right? I don't have to worry too much about how the interface works or whatever, because I've made enough music with it at this point that I know what the workflow is like, and if I have an idea, I can just sort of play it out. It's good. You should try it. If you've ever had any interest in making electronic music, Famitracker is an excellent starting point for chiptunes.
How we doing, man?
17 minutes and 25 seconds in. All right, boys and girls, I feel like this one has run its course. Getting a little long-winded. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys back to the studio. I'll see you there.
Back again in the studio. This next track is from the City Pop collection. Come on, we played this just a few weeks ago. This is Tokai from the Gores City Pop collection, Gors, which, by the way, is a free download if you look them up on Bandcamp. Stick with us. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to the van. It's Friday. This is Friday morning. This is the very last one of these I'm going to do this week. I'm in the van, getting ready to go start my work day. 5:18 in the morning. It's 53 degrees out. Not that cold, but it rained, so it's really wet. I can't tell if it's still raining or not. Yeah, it looks like it still is. Lightly. We got a light drizzle on this Friday morning, getting ready to go in and finish off the work week. Got up early this morning and ended up doing a little streaming. First time I attempted streaming in quite a while. I streamed some Resident Evil 5 Mercenaries mode. Now don't worry, I'm not going to go off on another Resident Evil tangent. But it felt good to stream again. Banged it out for about 35 minutes. Didn't really get seen by anybody. A couple people drifted in and they left. But the recording goes up on my YouTube channel. I was cruising around on my YouTube channel yesterday looking at old stuff, just seeing how the last year or so has gone. And I saw a couple of my old streams. I've only done it a couple of times before, and it's been a long time. The last game I streamed was Final Fantasy VII. It's just like, okay, here's a grinding session in FF7, trying to push the game a little further. And then before that, I did Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries mode, which, by the way, I'm not very good at. Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries mode is extremely difficult. But yeah, it felt good to stream again. I have a small channel, and on top of that, the only time I can stream is this very odd time, 5 and 5:30 in the morning. From 5 to 6 is really my time available. So I can't imagine those streams ever doing anything but sitting mostly unwatched. But it was fun. It was fun. I had a good time playing, and it's a little bit more content out there. So if you're up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, make sure you have the bell open so that you get the alert, so you can come hang out, start your day off with a little TCTV. Last night I finally opened up the Castlevania collection and was messing around with it. I had fun with it. I ended up playing Bloodlines, which is a little funny because I have Castlevania Bloodlines on Sega Genesis. I have the actual cartridge. So I felt a little weird playing that on Steam when it's like, okay, look, I get it, some of the other games. Like if I'm going to play Castlevania 3 on NES, I don't actually own the cartridge. So this is like a way I can play that above board. But Bloodlines I own. So I quickly found... Alright, so I haven't played a Castlevania game in a long time. I'm not much of a Castlevania guy. I know these are beloved games. It's a beloved series. And I can see why. I mean, the visuals are amazing. But my goodness. My son was with me. And I was explaining the concept that, look, not all of the enemies are designed to deal damage. Some of them, yes, they'll deal a little damage, but they're designed to knock you back into the pit. He was like, oh, that's weird. To make matters worse, the amount you have to go back when you die is something that's difficult for a young, modern gamer to understand. There's a part towards the beginning of Castlevania Bloodlines where you're in the bottom of a stage and you have to climb upwards. And as you're climbing upwards, water is rising from the floor to the ceiling. So if you don't go fast enough, the water will surround you and you'll drown. Or if you miss a jump, then of course you'll fall in the water and you'll drown. It's doable, but it's very tough. And you get to the top and there's a boss there, a mini boss. In fact, there's 3 consecutive mini bosses, and if you die on any one of those mini bosses, you got to go all the way back and you got to do that water rising stage again. So playing this on the Sega, I'm pretty sure this was as far as I could get. I don't seem to remember ever getting past this guy. I think NG came over once while I was playing Bloodlines, and I saw him do it, so I know it's possible. But I wasn't able to do it myself. This is where it's like, all right, we're going to smash that save feature. We're going to make it through that water stage, and we're going to go ahead and save state, and we're never going to play it again. But you know what? I had a good time. Mike Matai might tell you when I beat the game. Mike Matai might tell you that I didn't beat it. But you know what? I played through that stage. It's so weird that there's no Symphony of the Night or Dracula X. Because those are like the primary games I would have been interested in. I mean, I guess that's not fair. But Dracula X was the one that I had for the longest time. Dracula X on the Super Nintendo. And many people prefer Rondo of Blood, which I guess is the Japanese like a version of Dracula X. Or rather, the game that Dracula X is derived from. But neither one of those are there. This is a Super Nintendo classic. Right? A Super Nintendo classic and a desirable, sought-after game. Should be there. Same with Symphony of the Night. Oh, no excuse to not have Symphony of the Night. This is not a rights thing. We talk about when they make collections like these, it's like there's an issue of rights sometimes. But this is all Konami property in a collection that was put out by Konami. So I don't know what kind of rights they would have to contend with. But I would have loved to have played Symphony of the Night. And I wasn't on there. But I'm enjoying Bloodlines. Looking forward to playing Castlevania Adventure. And I'll also probably try Castlevania 3, because I don't think I've ever played it, even once. I grew up playing the original Castlevania. That was the game I knew. Alright? Now, I was familiar with Castlevania 2 as well. I don't know. I can't think of what it's called. Castlevania 2. The one that was like an adventure game. Sort of mix. I knew that game. I never got hooked on it. But as a kid, my older brother had it. And I saw him play it a handful of times. So I knew what that was. But the third game was one of these games that, like, it didn't exist for me until emulation came around. And I was able to start watching people play stuff on the internet. So, consequently, I don't have the same nostalgic connection to Castlevania 3 that I do to the first one, or even the second one. But people say it's a great game. So now that I have it in the collection, I should give it a try. I don't know. I'm enjoying the whole thing so far. So far, I'm not quite sure if I can say it was worth spending $10 on. Because this is a $20 collection. You're talking about, they want $20 regular price for this. Goes on sale regularly. Anytime there's a major sale, they slash the price in half. But yeah, I don't know. I would, in order to justify the full price, I would say you'd have to be dead set on playing through at least 2 of these games. So we'll see. So far, I don't think I'm going to get as much mileage out of it as I did the Capcom Beat 'em Up collection, because I played every single game in that collection. That thing was awesome. You know what else would be fun to stream again is Jill of the Jungle. I did this over on Twitch last year at some point. I was trying to get a Twitch channel off the ground, and I did some early morning streaming of MS-DOS games. Jill of the Jungle was one that I played. And I played nearly all the way through that first episode. What? Excuse me, I would love to play that again. Jill of the Jungle is such a great game. Back when Tim Sweeney was a hero. Before there was any epic game service. But what's weird is that I never seriously played episodes 2 or 3 in Jill of the Jungle. Jill of the Jungle was one of these shareware era games, right? So you had episode 1, which was shareware. Great episode, 10 or 11 levels, whatever it is. And then there were 2 additional episodes you had to pay for. And I remember trying them when I discovered Abandonware and I was finally able to get my hands on them. But only for a minute or 2 to see what they were like, and that was it. Oh gosh. Now I have it on GOG.com. That's how I have Jill of the Jungle these days, I'm pretty sure. But I remember back in the 90s, and I know I've told this story before, so bear with me. Back when Shadow Warrior was a new game, so that will put a solid date on it. We're talking about 1998, 97, 98. Shadow Warrior was a new game. I called the 1-800 number associated with Apogee, or 3D Realms, or whatever it was. It was the same number that was printed on the exit screen of Jill of the Jungle. Right? If you play Jill of the Jungle in MS-DOS, not the GOG version, but play the MS-DOS version, when you leave the game, when you decide to exit the game, there's a splash screen made up of ASCII graphics. And that splash screen has a P.O. box number, and it has a phone number. The idea usually being, they would take this time to advertise their games. Hey, thanks for playing the shareware version. There's 2 entirely new episodes of this game. They're $20 a piece. If you want them, write out to P.O. Box, Apogee Software, whatever, 123, whatever. Or call 1-800, whatever. Well, I called the 800 number. This is in the 90s. And I got put through to... I got put through to a line that had an automatic introduction, but then ultimately put me through to a person. They didn't quite have the same robocall technology they did in those days that we have now. And the automated greeter that I had was an advertisement for Shadow Warrior. It was like celebrating our new game Shadow Warrior. We're doing X, Y, and Z. And then I got through to a person. I remember speaking to a lady and asking her about Jill of the Jungle. Because Jill of the Jungle used to be expensive. Again, $20 per episode, something like that. You want to talk about bananas, crazy fart expensive? Play the shareware version of ZZT, the old ASCII graphics game, and then quit. Look at the splash screen. See how much the other ZZT games cost back in those days. Now they're all freeware. I'm not talking about abandonware, but they were actually released legally to be downloaded and played for free. But they wanted if you wanted all the episodes, it was going to be $60, $70, something like that. A lot of money. So I called, and the lady explained to me the price hadn't really gone down at that point. So looking back on it, Jill of the Jungle was released in the early 90s, and this was a late 90s call. I don't know exactly when the dates were. I think I'm going to guess 93, maybe that game came out. And the call was 5 years later. At the time, when I was young, it seemed like those 2 dates were forever away, but I guess it was it wasn't really that old at that point, was it? That's weird to think. There were a number of instances where I played games in the 90s that I thought, well, hold on a second. I had to fire up the windshield wipers just a little bit more. So there was a couple of instances where I played games in the 90s that at the time I thought were old games, but turned out later in life I found out that they hadn't really been out that long. Another great example is Ultima Underworld, right? Ultima Underworld I played in 1998. And that game came out in 1992 or 93? 92. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 6 years later. So the distance between when it came out and when I played it was less than like a PS2 game and now. So yeah, it's pretty close. Pretty close. But again, by the time I played Ultima Underworld, that was on a collection, and I was able to get it for very cheap. $30, and I had that game and then like 10 others in the Ultimate RPG archives. That was what we had in those days instead of Steam sales. We had collections, in-box collections that would show up on the shelves of game stores. Space Quest collection, Ultima Archives collection, RPG Archives, Pinball collection. Single but physical boxes you could buy with multiple CDs in them. That's what we had instead of Steam sales. It was effective. It worked. Those were what I looked for, when I could find them. Well, it is Friday, and this evening will be Friday night, but I have a school function to go to this evening, so I have a feeling that I'll be busy. However, things I'm most looking forward to playing this weekend, I would have to say I want to sit down with Castlevania Bloodlines again. I enjoyed that. It was a much more chilled out experience. I was able to enjoy the like the way it looks, and how clever that boss is where the water is raising, without it just destroying me in frustration. So I'm looking forward to enjoying the rest of what that game has to offer. I think that would be a really solid evening. And with that, boys and girls, I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. I'll see you there.
I can't believe we're an hour and 2 minutes in, and we're just getting back to the studio after the Vancast. My goodness. Big thanks to everybody who's still with us an hour and 2 minutes in on a 3 Jumbo Vancast episode of Tiger Claw Radio. All right, so here's the deal. I like to interact with you guys. Questions, comments, anything you have that you want read on the air. There's usually only a few. We put it at the end of the show. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way to do it is to leave a comment on YouTube. Or if you know me personally, you can send me an email. Just be clear about what I can and can't read on the air. It's the best way to, avoid any conflict. So we got a few comments from YouTube. First one comes from Desm101, who writes, "Sounds like your kid and I both have a similar approach to making music. Ha! I'm a loop dude who just builds and subtracts on a basic concept to try and expand on it into a full track. I wish I had those chops he has at such a young age. Today I think I liked your track a bit better for the battle." Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And then he has a time signature of 54 minutes, and he says, "Oh, FM Towns Marty. That's one of those rare high-end Japanese systems that runs some very impressive ports. A similar system would be the X68000. Am I saying that right? X68000. It's more like a high-end PC, but they're both highly sought-after consoles." Very cool, man. I appreciate that. I don't know much about those systems. They have some good ports, though, right? What are the games that people are after? You know how like Sega Saturn has a few titles that you hear over and over again. Like everybody who's Radiant Silvergun has come up at least once. If you like talking about the Saturn, those types of things. What are the FM Towns Marty games that come up whenever people discuss that system? Is it Splatterhouse? Because I know it's got Splatterhouse, right? How is Splatterhouse on the FM Towns Marty? Is there any emulation for that system? How would you try it? How much does one of those cost? I don't know anything. But Desmond, my man, it's good to hear from you, brother. When's your next full set coming out? When's your next? I know you did a full DJ set, I think early last year, and you put it up on YouTube. When's the next one coming out, man? It's been a year already. Hope your life is good, brother. Mecha Menace writes in, Vigilante 8's second offense title track reminds me of the funky vibe of the Jumping Flash 1 and 2 stage select music. Check it. All right, quick break here so I can check that out. Yes, it does. My goodness. I just listened to the Jumping Flash 2 soundtrack, and it kind of flipped around a little bit. Yeah, very. It's missing the 1970s vocals that Vigilante 8 does very, very well, at least in the title screen music. But yeah, that's pretty hip, my man. All right, what else we got? Perhaps it was something in the air at the time. 20-year-old nostalgia, then fully fermented places. Geez, I'm reading this wrong. 20-year-old nostalgia, then fully fermented places you in the 70s. Jeez. Nope, I'm going to read this again because I'm having a hard time reading. 20-year-old nostalgia, then fully fermented places you in the 70s. Jeez, I think I made it. Teacher, I get my gold star. Is it circle time now? Oh my gosh. I really ought to go back and chop that out, but I'm just too tired. I got to make this happen. We're running out of time, boys and girls. I do remember bell-bottom jeans coming back into fashion in the 90s. Yeah, I remember that too, but mostly with girls. He then writes, I do not prefer either track. I love it, man. I love how honest you guys are. I never for a second get a big head doing this show. I appreciate that. The guy behind me at the Super Mario Bros. The Super Mario Brothers Super Show game says he's doing it as an exercise and an activity with his kids. I think he could also use it as a pitch to get himself to other companies for a job. If it does get out, it'll probably be leaked, and there will be no official site hosting it. And what happened? And what happened to another Metroid 2 remake or Super Mario War? And he drops a link. Oh yeah, I'll one up your Hadasan with, and then he has another link. By the way, go check out the comment section of last week's episode. All the links he puts. All right, let me pause this so I can check his links out. Okay. So this is something special. So what we have here. Mecha Menace was able to place my Hadasan, which he links to the N64 Bomberman Arcade Edition. I got that from the PlayStation 1 Bomberman, Bomberman Party Edition on the PS1. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But it was designed to run with the multi-tap on PS1. I think it might have even been designed to run 2 multi-taps, but don't quote me on that. It was a great game that my older brother had, and it was my introduction to modern day Bomberman. It was the first Bomberman game I ever played that was Bomberman, as we know it now. So I would imagine it's probably identical to the N64 game that you linked there. Very awesome, Mecha Menace. Hope your life is good, brother. Let's see. A lot of people commented on my video for the C64. I did a video, we need the C64 Maxi in the US. That's referring to the full-size reproduction of the C64, Commodore 64. That video did for me pretty well, and people seem to respond to it. Some people are offering solutions. One guy says, just buy it on Amazon.de. You'll get it fast. $129 US dollars shipped. Very easy. I've got mine. That's $129. That's a lot better than what I thought it was going to be, but that's $129. That's Steve and Kathy reunion. Thanks very much for the input, by the way. I appreciate it. We also got one. Eric Therian says $159.99 including shipping here. It's about the cheapest I found. I paid $175 for mine on eBay, and he puts links for a Shop 4 Megastore. And then Peter Pocket says, I'm with you, man. C64 owner since age 7, 1983. I have a working 128, but I want the C64 Maxi for taking on on family trips. Not interested in the Mini because the functional keyboard is the main selling point. I want to play mainly old school RPGs, and the thought of using a virtual keyboard constantly is a deal breaker. We'll try to order from Germany, but a US release would be amazing. Yeah. First of all, awesome to hear from another one of the older generation who played these games when they were new. Classic computer RPGs are amazing, aren't they? So I had the C64 Mini, and I'm going to make a video about this at some point because people seem to respond to that. I returned my C64 Mini. I returned it, and not because of what you think, because the keyboard, not as big a deal as you think. The problem was it kept crashing. So maybe I had a defective unit or whatever, but I specialty ordered a power adapter to work with it twice, and neither time did it work. So that's when I tapped out. Oh, and there's my symbol to get going. So, brother, I hope it works out. It's good to hear from you, and I would be interested to hear what games you're playing. What games specifically are the C64 RPGs worth it? And with that, I'm going to take a quick recording break, and hopefully tomorrow evening, because that's the end of my YouTube comments, tomorrow evening, which will be Saturday evening, I can come back and read the email from Hemrock, because he has a good one. And with that, boys and girls, I'll see you tomorrow night. All right, how's that sound? Whoa. Oh my gosh, that's peaking hard. How about that? Is that a little better? Let's zoom in a little bit more so I can see the needles. I think we're good now. That looks pretty close to like what it was. All right, this is now being recorded on Saturday night. It's 7:59 p.m. I got a very limited amount of time to get this done. So there's one final comment, and that's an email from Hemrock. Hemrock, good buddy. I always like reading your emails. Thanks very much. And he writes, Hey, CF. Thanks a million for reading my email, especially right after you ran a marathon based on your energy level. Just messing with you, mate. In any case, I do feel a bit guilty for holding up the show. My apologies. Hemrock, it wasn't your fault that the show got held up. I just ran out of time to record on that night, and I ended up doing your email when we came back. So I would have had to. It was either the show was going to end right there, or it's fine. Don't worry about it. Concerning the chiptune competition with your son, my vote goes to you, but I have to say it's close. I went back and forth and actually listened to the songs a few different times. That's 2 for me. I like your idea about using multiple SD cards on the Raspberry Pi. Any updates on this? Yes, I do have an update on that, and it's as follows. I'm broke, brother. I'm broke. The money's all gone. I gotta not buy anything for a while. It doesn't take long. I have a job, so the money will come back. But I gotta take a little break ski from purchasing things, or fire up my eBay shop again, because I got a lot of stuff in my office that I can part with, without any problems. And get money that way. What? Yeah. So that's going to be on hold for a while. It was especially disheartening to have to return my C64 Mini. Very disheartening. So I don't know. Let's get back to the email. Thank you for the DOS recommendations. I appreciate it. Here are a few recommendations of my own. I'm sure you've played some, but maybe there's a few you haven't. Lemmings. Looks boring, but it's actually pretty fun. Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with Lemmings. I played it when I was a kid, and MS-DOS games were still in vogue, but I haven't played it since then. Colonization. Before Civilization, there was Colonization. Both made by Sid Meier, but Colonization has much more enjoyable trade system. I highly recommend you play it. It often goes on sale on GOG. Yeah, I know that's a favorite of yours. I've tried it a few times. It's a good game. I still prefer good old-fashioned Civilization, but Colonization is definitely worth playing. I'm partial to the Civilization 4 version, which I know is heresy for an old MS-DOS guy. But let's continue. He also writes, DuckTales, Quest for Gold, a surprisingly good licensed Disney game for DOS that combines several different game modes into a grand pursuit of hoarding loads and loads of money. Loads of money! This is one of my favorite games as a kid. 100% recommended. Look up a video on the YouTube and for more info. That is shocking, brother, because I thought all the MS-DOS licensed games were terrible. I'll have to look that up and check it out. Next one, he says, Arcade Volleyball. This isn't the exact version I played, but nonetheless, a great little distraction if you have a few minutes to play. All right, quick break. When you say Arcade Volleyball, are you talking about the game with the 2 little heads, where it's like circular heads with feet, and they're bouncing the volleyball back and forth? Because that game, I go way back with. We had that on my dad's IBM 386 machine. He had it nestled away on a floppy disk somewhere, and we have no idea where he got it or where it came from, but I remember playing Arcade Volleyball with my brothers on an old clickety-clackety keyboard from the 1980s, and doing that thing where 2 people would crowd around a single keyboard. It is good times. Arcade Volleyball if you look at it and you've never seen it before, it's going to look dumb. You're going to be like, what is this? I don't get it. But I go way back with that game. So yeah, all about Arcade Volleyball for sure. Dune 2, full disclosure, I haven't played the PC version, but I played the one on the Sega Genesis, and it's a great old school RTS. XCOM UFO Defense, enough said. All right, and that's the list. So Dune 2, Dune, D-U-N-E. I've never actually played those games. Look, I know that these are like some of the foundation real-time strategy games out there, but I didn't get into real-time strategy until Command & Conquer came out. That's when I got into it. So it started with Command & Conquer, then I moved into Warcraft 2, and then that was it. I never, I never got into an RTS game again. And XCOM UFO Defense is an amazing game. There's still a lot about that game I don't know. Like, I don't, but yeah, I enjoy it. It's one of those games I come back to every couple of years and I have a go around with. But let's get back to the email. He says, lean back just a little bit. I'm pretty sure you already know this, but you can export pinball games made in Pinball Construction Set as independent executable files. Do you have any of these you'd be willing to distribute to the community? I'd like to see some Tigercade action. Okay, about that. I did know that, yes. I made a video for Pinball Construction Set in the early days of Tiger Claw TV. It was like one of the first 10 videos or so that I made was Pinball Construction Set. At the time, I created like a pinball pack, and I made a zip file that you could just download, and anybody could go download them. The site that was hosting that file is down. So I'm sure I have that zip file nestled away somewhere, but it's on an external hard drive and it's buried, so it'd take a lot of effort to get it out. I'd much rather just fire it up and make a new one. But yes, I'm very familiar with creating. This is what breaks my heart, man. All right, so at my mother's house, she has, well, or should I say, I had as a kid a big box. Well, not a big box. Jeez, I'm telling this all wrong. Do you remember 5 1/4 inch floppy disks? How they used to 5 1/4, 5 1/2, whatever size they are, the big floppy disks. They used to come in those little boxes, and it'd have like, I don't know, 10 or 15 of them in there. Well, I had one of those filled with blank disks that my father gave me, and I played Pinball Construction Set, and I would make pinball tables, and I would save them on those disks, and I would write on the disks Pinball 1, Pinball 2, Pinball 3. I had a ton of these tables saved because I was playing games off of diskette. I didn't have a million games like we have now. Even the NES that we had at the time, oftentimes I couldn't play it because I was the youngest. So when we had game time, my brothers would play it and wouldn't let me play. So I would I'm going to play the old computer because that's what I've got. So a whole lot of Pinball Construction Set tables. But somewhere along the line, those disks corrupted, as discs often do, especially when they're in the care of very young children. And all those tables were lost in time. I still see the discs when I go to my mother's house. They're still there with Pinball 1, Pinball 2, etc., written on them. But I know they're not going to work, and it breaks my heart. Pinball Construction Set is a great game. And I know the guy who made it, Bill Budge, went on to make a similar game for the Sega Genesis. If you've ever played Virtual Pinball on the Sega Genesis, it also has like a table edit mode where you can place parts. And that's Bill Budge's influence. It's the same guy who made Pinball Construction Set, but it's not the same. Totally not the same and not as good in my opinion. Yeah, but let's get back to the email. We got a couple more things here. He says, played a little bit of FF7 last night. I finally got to the airship. Have you played it much recently? Well, it says take my friend. I mean, it's take care, my friend. I better go. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. And he enclosed a custom-made magic card, which, by the way, I appreciate that it's an M10 Mythic. The Kool-Aid Man, because this is how you handle your problems, boys and girls. If there's whatever it is that you don't want to do, when our minds have a way of building walls around us, and problems, barriers, things that are stopping you from getting where you want to be. And the best way to deal with those is smash through them like the Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah! Haste flash. Kool-Aid Man can't be blocked by walls, because of course he can't. I love it. Thanks, man. It's good to hear from you, brother. And with that, boys and girls, that's the show. Thanks for listening to Tiger Claw Radio. We're an hour and 20 minutes, so I got to make this quick. I hope you guys have a good week. Whatever you're dealing with, stay strong. Keep at it. I'm rooting for you. I'll see you next week.